In this tutorial, we're going to look at how to create a simple utility app. Now, the utility app has two screens, and the template that we use in Xcode helps us to quickly create that type of an app. So for demonstration, we're going to do a recipe app for peanut butter and jelly. And also in this, we're going to learn how to import in an image to be able to use for the screen icon. And when I tap this, then you'll also see the default image, which loads as the app loads. So that just happened really fast, but you'll see the full image when we start to develop our app. So that default image is what loads while, or shows while the application is loading. So our app is actually going to be for peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and we're going to learn how to add text and an image to the screen, also to add a button. And the utility app also comes with the information button automatically. And so by tapping this, it's going to flip to the other view, which is going to have our ingredients or instructions, and we'll have a done button to be able to flip back to the start image. We'll also learn how to add this button, the show recipe, and have that do the same method that this information button does, so that we can tap that to get to the recipe and the done button to flip back again. So that is an overview of what our app is going to do. So before we jump right in and start creating the app, I want to show you the images that I have already set up for using in the app. Now I have a folder called Images, and I'm making these available for you to be able to download, so you can look in the description for this video for the link for that. But I have my image for the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I like images from iStock Photo, so I pull images from there all the time. Now we have default and default at 2x PNG. The default image is what we can define as an image to display while the app is loading. So if you've worked with iPhone or iPads, when an app is loading, there's something for the user to see and watch, and so that's what your default image is. It's something that appears while the app is loading. So we can name it default PNG, and then we have default at 2x PNG. Now the difference is that one is for the non-Retina display devices. So iPhones that would be pre-iPhone 4 are non-Retina display. The iPhone 4 and higher has a Retina display, where for every point or pixel is really 2 pixels or points, where the information is, that's where we get a much more crystalline and much more clearly defined image. So if we have default, then Xcode will automatically use this image for the launch image. And if we use the same name with an @2x, you can see down here we also have an icon @2x. If you use this naming convention, Xcode will automatically grab these higher resolution images for the Retina display devices. So we don't have to build anything into our code to say, well, if it's a pre-4 device, use this image, and if it's a 4 or higher with a Retina display, then use this image. So if you follow this naming convention, then Xcode will do that for you automatically for all of your images. So anything with an @2x, Xcode will automatically grab that and use it in its place. So let me just show, we have the default PNG and @2x PNG for the Retina display, and then we have icon PNG and icon @2x PNG for the Retina display. So Xcode will grab and use the correct one depending on what type of device is being displayed on. Let me just show you, since the icon images are so close to each other, I'm going to do get info. And you can see that the sizing for icons are a non-retina display is 57 by 57. And if you see here, the image is squared off, but when we pull this into Xcode, it will round the corners for us. So let me just pull up the simulator again so that you can see, all right, how this is squared off, but when we create our app and it uses this as an image, the iPhone, this automatically rounds the corners and puts that little shine on there for us. So we don't have to go in and do that. Now the icon at 2x, the size for Retina, let me go in and get the information for that. Right, it's double. So the Retina display is actually double the size. So you can see the dimensions here, 114 by 114. So by including both of those in my app, it will be able to display the proper image depending on the type of device it's being displayed on. And the same thing with default PNG. Default PNG, right, it's non-retina display is 320 by 480, and that's in a portrait mode. And then when we have the at 2x, right, it's 640 by 960, so doubled. So this would be displayed on a retina, and this would be on non-retina devices. So that's where the images come from, or how they are set up in order to be able to use in our app. So we'll move on into starting to create the app, and then we'll import in these images and how to use them. We'll begin by creating our app in Xcode. So I've started Xcode, and from the menu screen I'm going to choose Create New Xcode Project. And then we're presented with some options, and I'm going to choose a template under the iOS application options, and I'm going to choose a utility application. And that's going to give us the flip view where we have one screen and it'll flip to another screen. So I'm going to choose Next, and we create our product name, which I'm just going to do as PBJ. And we have our company identifier, so those two together create our unique bundle identifier. And I'm going to leave class prefix empty. We're going to target this for the iPhone, and we want to make sure automatic reference counting is checked off. And I'm going to click Next, and then it's going to ask for a location where to store our file. So I'm just going to put mine on the desktop, and I'll choose Create. Okay, and it is finished loading in, and on the left-hand side here, under our navigator area, we have our files and we have our project information. Now, we had just looked at the app icons and launch images, so I'm going to add those into my project by dragging the folder of the images into my folder files. So I'm just going to move this down a little bit, and I'm going to put my images folder on screen here so that you can see them. And I'm just going to open that folder, right? I've got my images in here with my icon, the default images, and the image of our peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So I'm just going to, I can select these images and drag them over individually. I'm going to take the whole folder, and then that way these images will stay in that folder. And I'm going to put that into the supporting files folder. So I'm going to click and drag over there, and what pops up here is an option for putting in our images. We want to choose Copy Items into Destinations Group folder and create groups for any added folders so it will keep the same folder structure. So I'll click Finish, and then you can see over here that the Images folder has been added, and we have the images. Now it picked up our launch images for the Retina and the non-Retina display, it didn't pick up the app icon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say icon PNG for non-Retina display. It's already there. You want to copy it in. I'm just going to say yes for it to recognize it. And then I'll do the same thing for the at 2x version, which is the Retina display. And again, say yes for it to recognize it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build and run this in the simulator. And if you watch, you should be able to see the launch image. And then we'll go back out and look at the icon for the image or for the app. Okay, here's our little launch image. This is our app, which is pretty empty right now. So this is our first screen. It automatically gives us this info button where we can tap it and it flips over to the back side. We have a done button and a title, and again a second screen that is blank right now. But these are set up to navigate and flip back and forth. So not a bad start for just choosing a template. Now if I hit my home button here and I go back out, you can see that we have our PBJ icon, and this is from my test example that I displayed before. So it picked up the icon and then it also picked up the launch image. So let's work on getting the rest of this app set up. To create this project, I'm going to walk through the steps in creating the example that I demonstrated at the beginning. I'm not going to go into an in-depth level discussion in this video. I will create a separate video that will have a more in-depth explanation of things. So for the purposes of this, we're just going to walk through the steps in order to get this app created. And again, I'll have a separate video that will be more in-depth with explanations. So to finish creating this app, I'm going to go into the main view controller nib file. So in your navigator, you want to find the main view controller nib. Now you may hear this or see this explained different ways, but XIB can be pronounced as zib files or nib files. They did used to be called .nib, which is how the term nib file came about. So you may hear that term used interchangeably, nib file or zib file. But basically these are the interface files. So when we select this, this opens up Interface Builder, and Interface Builder is where we can interactively create the user interface. Now our utility app, since we chose that as our template, already started us off with a button. And you can see here in the object viewer, we have our view, which is this entire screen area here. And then within our view, we have the button. And over on the side, we have some properties, and you can see the type of button is Info Light. And we can have Info Dark, which really it kind of disappears with. So I'm going to change it back to Info Light. And this has already been set up so that when we click on it, it shows the flip side and it does the animation to the other side. And again, more details on that in a different video. So if we wanted to set this up, and again, this is what our project is going to look like, right? We had some text and we had an image, and for now we'll just set up this button to go to the other side where we have our recipe information. So I'm going to put some text and we'll put our image on here. So in our panels over here, we have an object panel down here. I'm just going to drag this up a bit so we have a little more space. And I'm going to put a text label on, so I'm just going to click and drag this over onto Interface Builder. And you can see how we've got some lines in here to help us line things up. So we have a guideline that across the top, which is showing us that, you know, it's a good idea to not go any further up than that. And it also gives us a centering to show us where the text is centered on the screen. And I'm going to, with that selected, I'm just going to double click on it and type in the text. And I'm going to make the text contrasting a little bit more. So I'm going to change the text color here on the panel from default. And I'm just going to choose a lighter color. Right, and now you can see it's not centered anymore, so I'm just going to click and drag it, and I'll get the guide, and it will show me where center is. And you can also play around with other settings over here on the panel, and I'll leave that to you to investigate. Next, I'm going to add an image. So I want graphics or an image view. Now we can slide through here and you can see all the different types of interface elements that you can add. And if you know what something is called and you don't want to just scroll through this all over the place, in this little box down here you can type in what it's called or part of it, and it will sort it through, or it will filter out different options for you. So now I have image view, and I can drag this over on my screen. And again, I get the guidelines to show me where center is and where my right and left recommended margins are. And once it's up here, I can stretch this out. You can go on to the different sizing handles to make it larger or smaller. And then with this image view selected, again on your panels over here, I didn't point out that we have different options in here that you'll be changing back and forth through. So if you're having trouble finding something that I'm showing you, then you want to make sure you're in the right panel. So this is the Attributes Inspector. So with the image view, UI image view, you can see that the naming in here you want to kind of get into your head, because you'll be using the same type of naming convention when you're writing things in your code. But this is UI for User Interface Image View. So UI Image View. And with this selected, I can come over here, and since I have my images already dragged into my project file, I can click over here and it's going to show me all the possible options. So I'm going to choose my PBJ image. And you can see it's slightly distorted. One thing you want to be really attuned to is a very easy way to tell if something is an amateur project is that images are distorted. So rather than using the scale to fill mode, you can play around with some of these other options, but aspect fit is going to keep it into its normal height and width proportions. And you can see aspect fill keeps it in proportion, but then it filled the actual space that I had set up for it. So you can play around with those options. I'm going to change it back to aspect fit though, because I kind of liked the way that looked. And I can zoom this in and out if I wanted to make it larger. Okay, so I'm going to run this in the simulator again. This time you can see that the stop button is got a black box on it. Since I didn't stop it from running before, it's still there, so I have the option to stop it. So let me show you what happens. If I go to run it again, it says that it's already running and that we have to stop it and launch a new instance. So I'm going to click stop. And you can see up here that it's showing the build activity and how things are progressing. And if we had any errors, we would have some red in here, and we'll take a look at how to work with errors coming up. These are just some warnings, so at this point they're not a big issue to deal with. So we have our sample running in our simulator, and the I button flips to the flip side view, and done flips back again. So far so good in just setting up our interface. Let's go to the flip side view controller nib file, which is the other side, right? And you can see that it already gave us the navigation, and that's set up here. We can change the title. If I click in this area, you can see under our object selector, we've got the navigation bar that I clicked on. And then within the navigation bar, we have navigation item title. So a lot of times this can be very useful in trying to select things. And we also have the done button. So I'm going to come back up here and select title. And instead of it saying title, I'm going to say recipe, or the recipe, all right? And if I didn't want it to say done, if I wanted it to say something else like back, so if I wanted this to say back instead of done, or home, maybe home might make more sense. It all depends on what your app is set up for. Then we'll say home. And then in here we can add elements. Now my image view is still the only thing that's showing here, and that's because this is still being filtered. So if I backspace that out, it brings up all of my objects again that I can select from. So let's come in, and instead of a label, we will use a text view. So I'm going to choose text view, and I'm just going to, when you tap on these, you get a longer description, so you can check and make sure that that's what it is that you want to use. And I'm just going to drag this out onto my interface. Now I left it so that you can see as I hovered over, I kind of wanted to fill up that space that was in there. Now if I wanted to use a smaller space, I can resize it. So maybe I wanted to put this on a different background area to kind of have a little transition or contrast area, make it look like it's in its own frame. So I have white text, or a white background with black text on there. You can see in here, first of all, the text that's in here, we have some Greek text, some Greek placeholder text that we can put our recipe information into. We can adjust things like alignments. All right, so when I try to change this, let me come in here. Before we clicked on a little color chip here, if we click on the drop-down list, we can say recently used colors. So I'm going to choose white text. Of course, now we have white on white, which makes it impossible to see. So I want to change the background color of my text view. So I'm going to select my text view and scroll down in here, and we get to background, and I'm going to put a nice black background on there. So it looks like everything is set up and running. Let me just do another check in the simulator. All right, so our info button takes us to the flip side. We have our content over here, and our home button flips back. Oh, by the way, in between I realized that I did have recipe spelled wrong, so I did fix that. Okay, so if you wanted to update this with your own content, of course, if you select the text view, you can change the text that's in this area here. And again, feel free to experiment with some of the different settings in here to come up with your own look and feel and design. Now on the main view, on our main view controller nib, in the sample, I had another button here that would take the user to the flip side. So let's set that part up. I'm going to scroll up to the top, and I'm going to use a round rectangle button. I'm just going to drag that onto my screen. And again, I'm going to make this a little bigger just by dragging the sizing handles on here. And with it selected, you can edit the text. You can either do that over here in the attributes panel. You can also double click on it, and let's just say view recipe. So I can update it on the button. I can update it over here in the attributes panel. Now, this is not set up by default to do anything. Right? If I try running this in the simulator, I just want to show you what happens with that. Right? View recipe, just by default, by creating the button, it doesn't know what to do. When we use the template to create the utility application, this button was already set up to do this flip side, just like this home button is set up to go back to the main screen. So what we're going to do is set up this view recipe button so that when it's tapped, it's going to go to the recipe information, and then we'll be able to delete this and not have to use it. So this info button is actually connected to something that's called a method or an IB action. Now this is interface builder, so when we're in a nib file or a zip file here and we're working with it, when you can see this type of a view, we're working in interface builder. And we can make connections from elements that are in interface builder to things that are in our code. Now the main view controller, this is our main view, and the main view controller is displaying our view here. And then we have our what are called our header file and our implementation file. So now the header file contains information about our methods and properties, and then the implementation file or our class file. So if I click on like the main view controller header file, we can see here that we have something called an IB action called show info. And this is a method. This is an IB action. It's coming from Interface Builder, which means that something from Interface Builder is going to trigger this action. And this action is called show info. And without getting into a really deep discussion of this, I'll save that for a separate video. That full action or that full method is in the implementation file. And this has all the instructions on what it should do when it's triggered. Our purpose right now is in Interface Builder. We want to connect this button to the show info method, which this button is already connected to. So if I select this info button, right, and then on our panel over to the side, we have some different options, and one of them is the Connections Inspector. It's the last one with the little arrow. And you can see that this info button has a touch up inside, and that's the touch up inside event is something that's used most frequently for buttons. And you can see from here it's set to go to the show info method in Files Owner. We want to do the view recipe the same way. Now there's a few different ways that we can go about connecting this to that method. If I select it and I have the Connections Inspector view open, I can say touch up inside, and I can come over here to this little plus sign, and I can click and drag it, and I can say I can drag it over here to Files Owner and say I want to connect it to the show info method. Now I'm not going to connect it, so I'm just going to click off of it. I can also do that directly from the button. I can right click on my view recipe button, and as I right click and drag, I can say I want to connect it to Files Owner. Files Owner is where the code exists for what we want it to do, and then I can do the show info method here, and then you can see it made the connection over here. So that's what I can go from from having the button selected and go from the connections inspector over, or I can go directly from the element itself. And I'm going from the button to Files Owner because this is going to trigger an event that's in Files Owner. So now if I test this, I'm going to save everything. I'm going to stop the simulator and then run it again. Okay, and now this time I'm just going to tap the View Recipe, and here it does the same thing that the Info button did before. So since these are kind of redundant, you don't need to have them both do the same thing. I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to delete the Info button. So I'm just going to select it and then tap Delete on my keyboard. And you can see it's removed from the interface and it's also removed from our object list. So now I'm going to stop again. And again, I'm going to run it just to test it and make sure that it works okay. All right, and View Recipe pops over, and then we can use Home to flip back. So in a nutshell, that's creating a very basic utility app. And I'll have a separate video that's going to go into a lot more depth about header files and implementation files and how the code in here all works, and a deeper explanation of that.